Investigators had a suspect for almost 30 years based on a homicide with a similar MO, but they never were able to identify the body until now. For almost 50 years, Ada Fritz was a Jane Doe, her body discovered in South Mobile County without hands. Investigators at the time weren't able to identify her through conventional means, and when tips turned into dead ends, the case got shelved. Sergeant J.T. Thornton picked up the file periodically over the years as part of his job examining cold cases. He had a strong hunch a man named Henderson James Williams was responsible. He was convicted of murdering his 94-year-old mother in Mississippi. Her body was found in 1994, about 10 miles from where Fritz's was discovered in 1976. That body also had no hands. But Williams, who was serving a life sentence for his mother's murder, refused to answer questions about the Jane Doe case, and investigators still had no idea who the victim even was.
We needed some kind of physical evidence to tie him to that, but given the lapse of time and the government's inability to maintain records for extended periods of times, I kind of had lost all hope there for a minute.
A renewed push at solving the mystery began in 2021. Olivia McCarter, who has been using DNA and genealogy records to solve cold cases since she was 18 years old, got involved. But investigators couldn't locate the body from that long ago. Eventually, they learned it had been cremated. McCarter says she was devastated. No body, no DNA.
I thought that was the end of the road. I mean, my work is with DNA, and we didn't have dentals because she had no teeth, and we didn't have fingerprints because she had no hands. So there was no way we could have identified her, even if we had a missing person that we thought she could be.
But then, the unlikeliest of breaks.
I went searching the catacombs, so to speak, of our property section and happened upon the dental mold for this case.
It was curious, Thornton says, because the victim had no teeth. Why would forensic investigators even run the test? And even if they did, McCarter says, the chances they'd get usable DNA seemed remote. But they decided to try. They sent the mold to Intermountain Forensics in Utah. Laboratory Development Director Danny Hellwig calls it the island of misfit cases, where technicians use the latest technology to uncover the darkest secrets. He suggested using an MVAC, a tool originally developed to get food samples.
It sprays a solution down on the surface and then sucks it back up like a little vacuum. And so it pulls out all the DNA from the cracks and crevices where it may be hiding residually. It's a pretty fantastic tool for DNA collection.
McCarter says she never expected it to work.
It was a scientific miracle. I am still in awe. Our lab did wonderful work. I owe it all to them for this case, for out-of-the-box thinking.
From there, McCarter went to work on a DNA database, eventually finding a distant cousin. Then she tracked down a nephew who was able to identify Ada Fritz from a photo. McCarter has helped solve more than 15 cold cases from across the country, but the Grand Bay native says this one was personal.
This was from my hometown, though.
And there's an interesting footnote to this story. The case file has index cards where deputies wrote down tips that came in after discovering the body back in 1976. One of those tips came from Fannie Mae Gaunt, who thought that she might have been a friend of the victims. That turned out not to be the case, but by pure coincidence, she became a murder victim 2 years later, and that now also is a cold case. Reporting in the studio, Brendan Kirby, Fox 10 News.